Alongside Ari Timken, I'm James Westling. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. Heard exclusively on TuneIn, brought to you, the full-time fan, by our friends at Modelo. We're excited to chat with the West Virginia Athletic Director, Wren Baker, who we just saw at the spring meetings in passing about 1,000 times in Orlando. But excited to have you on the air with us today. Hey, Wren.
Good to be with you guys. We left warm, hot temperatures in Orlando, and they followed me to West Virginia. So we're in the middle of a heat wave here.
Yeah, it's the heat dome,
The
I
heat
guess.
dome.
Trapping all that heat. I don't know. The scientists have explained it to me. I think it makes sense.
Yeah, it's hot everywhere.
I called Coach Hodge last week. You know, he was at North Texas. I was there. And I told him, I said, it's going to get into the high 80s, low 90s. I said, in Texas this time of year, that'd be a cool front. But I said, yeah, West Virginia, we're not built for this, man. People are going to be falling out. There's going to be warnings to stay indoors. So,
yeah, it was 95 here yesterday, and it felt cool compared to what it could be.
Yeah. It's funny. All these people talk about a heat wave. It's like, it's actually nice here. It's
right,
not bad.
Right. All right. So you've been on the job since 2022. You've made some big splash hires with Ross Hodge, who you just noted, your men's basketball coach, who coached at UNT under Grant McCasland before he took over that program. And then Rich Rod. Let's start with Rich Rod. What led to the process of I know it was before your time, but essentially bringing him back to West Virginia?
yeah. So, I think for me, I really just tried to put aside a little bit early on the history here because, when Coach Rodriguez left, there were certainly people that had some strong feelings about that. And I understood those, but I think as an athletic director, you're trying to put prejudices aside and get the best candidate for the job. And if just following Rich's career at a variety of places, he's always been able to win at hard places, to get the most out of what a place has to offer. And so he wasn't the only candidate. We had a bunch of really good candidates and a very thorough process. Probably, normally I usually start with kind of zooming 6 to 8. I think on that one, it was probably double that I talked to in that first tranche of conversations. But the further we went in it, the more we started to think, hey, this really may be a viable option and maybe our best option. So let's at least run this out. And the more that I talked to Coach Rodriguez, the more I was convinced that he has the fire, the energy, the knowledge, but also. You always want someone who's deeply motivated. His motivation was more than just winning games. If you've ever been to West Virginia, there's a lot of pride in this state, and there's a lot of pride from West Virginians when West Virginians have success. And because of leaving 17 years ago, I think for 17 years he's been home and visited people, but he hadn't really been able to come home. And I think he wanted to come home to his school. To get the program to where it was previously, to have a healing process that would be good for the school, the state, and I'm sure good for Rich. And he's hit the ground running. He's full of fire and energy. I say this all the time. If he's lost anything off his fastball, I would have hated to have seen it 20 years ago because he definitely works hard, coaches hard. But he cares hard. He cares about the people in his program. And so far it's been a great fit. And I think fans have really rallied around him and this story of redemption and all of that. Our season ticket numbers are the highest they've been since 2013. So,
Wow.
It's so far so good on that front.
Do you have to take into account the obviously important differences between what goes into being a successful head football coach back then versus today, especially as it pertains to the transfer portal, NIL, and all these, modern circumstances?
Yeah, you do. And to be honest, his experience at Jacksonville State, that's what he's had to do even more than we've had. I mean, those group of five jobs are the roster turnover there is even more than some of the autonomy conference jobs because they've been working with less resources, less NIL, all that kind of stuff. And so, we did. We talked a lot about that, about roster management, about cap management, about all of those things, and trying to create a culture and instill a culture when you can't rely necessarily on upperclassmen to just carry your culture out for you. And he was really articulate about all those things. But probably my time and experience, having been a Group of Five athletic director there at North Texas, I also had some comfort that for the people who may say, "Well, this is a different level, this is a different time," I think those guys' jobs right now may even be harder than ours, as crazy as that may sound.
Mm.
Take us through the details of the new Gold and Blue enterprises in this new world of NIL, cap management, everything else that you were noting just a moment ago.
Yeah, so even before all of this new world, um, we had probably less in terms of outside opportunity than most. So some athletic departments run completely out of a separate 501c3, Kansas, for instance. Some run a lot of their fundraising and business opportunities out of one 12th man, for instance, or Arkansas has a Hog Foundation. But for us, we run our entire operation out of the university, and we do have the WVU Foundation, which that's where our fundraising is housed. But for the most part, they they use the same process as the university. So we were probably already behind a little bit in terms of really being able to take advantage of some of those outside entities. And so in this case, we looked at a variety of things, including how our research arm of the university is set up. But we decided, hey, we need to have a 501c3, but we want to have that organization own and operate a for-profit LLC so that we can live and breathe in both worlds. And you see that a lot of times universities with auxiliaries will have something set up similar to that. There are certain activities that make sense for us to do out of 501, and there are certain activities that don't make sense for us to do. So it'll give us a lot of flexibility and adaptability. Much of that other people already enjoy, but also that's where one of those two entities where we'll pay our rev share payments from, and so we won't have to publish a full payroll of what everybody's getting, so that if our starting left tackle's having a great game, coaches go back and just look and see what he was making. So there's probably some competitive trade secrets in there, but really it's trying to prepare for a future that I envision being much more commercialized and having commercial opportunities. So, if you look at what Jamie Pollard's doing at Iowa State with his entertainment district, I think people will explore more opportunities like that. And it's just easier to explore those when you don't have an organization who's entrenched in their rules and bylaws and history and tradition. You've got an organization that it's still going to be controlled by the university ultimately, but is much more adaptable and malleable and can move with the speed of opportunity.
You've had quite the short tenure so far at West Virginia. I mean, I think people need to have an appreciation for the incredible circumstances that Wren Baker's had, both coming in and then throughout. I mean, you came in with an interim head basketball coach. We don't have to go back through the previous coach, but then you had to hire a new both men's and women's basketball coach after just one season and success in both of those parts. A legendary baseball coach stepped down after one of the most successful seasons in West Virginia baseball history. I mean, I'm just scratching the surface here at some of these circumstances. I'm sure most ADs like hiring coaches. Are you at a point now where you're sick of it?
Yeah, so I always enjoy the process of hiring coaches, but it's very stressful. I mean, I typically will lose somewhere between 3 and 5 pounds during a coaching search just because you're so entrenched and focused on it. So it's been a great weight loss plan. I think we've done 7 or so.
I've been here. A ton of weight since hiking the mountains in West Virginia, man.
Yeah. So, yeah, I would love to have some stability amongst our head coaches, and we do have some head coaches who've done great things, and our rifle head coach just won a national championship. We were national runners up in cross country. Both those coaches have been here a long time. Our women's soccer coach has been here. She's the only women's soccer coach we've ever had. She started the program, and she's been here the entire time. I think around 2 decades, and so. Sometimes it's easy to look on the ones that's turned over, but we do have some stability. But certainly, men's basketball sticks out. When I got here, Coach Huggins was still here, and then we had Coach Eilert as interim. Then we hired Coach DeVries, and now we're on Coach Hodge. So I've been here 2.5 years, and this will be my fourth coach. So I think our fans, our alums of the program, just everybody's just ready for some stability there, and I'm ready for that and excited about it. I came here, and Don Plitzowite was in the midst of her first season. She had a chance to go to Minnesota. It's closer to family. And so I understood that. And that gave me a chance to hire Mark Kellogg, who's had some a great start here. And so, you're when you have jobs open, you're trying to find the best coach you can, but you want somebody who is going to come in and embrace being West Virginian too. It means a lot to people here, and you need somebody who understands that. And so I'm really excited about where we are right now. Certainly, getting Rich back, I didn't have to indoctrinate him, but Coach Hodge has also been great as well.
Is there almost, do you have to almost recalibrate in a sense with Dawn and Darren, where it's like, okay, I got to make sure that they want to be here and they aren't looking at this as a stepping stone. And I'm sure you have to balance those two things, because you want people that want to aspire to greatness, but you also want people that are going to be there for the long term.
Yeah, it's a delicate balance. I think as an AD, that's the fan reaction for sure. Oh, we just need to get somebody who wants to be here.
Right.
I think you have to resist the pressure to just give in to that, because you really are trying to find the best coach. And if you're hiring coaches that are coming in and having enough success that you're having to fight to keep them, that's a good problem to have. Now, it's a fight every year, and it gets, as an AD, you live a tortured life. Either things aren't going well and you're having to stay up at night worried about making a coaching change, or they are going well and you're having to stay up at night worried about being able to fight people off for your coach. So there's never
Good
this
point.
happy medium where you're just relaxed and enjoying things. And so, I think if given those two things, you would take the coach you got to fight to keep every year. But the hope would be that you have a coach who comes in with a true heart and spirit of wanting to embrace the culture and the people. And speaking from personal experience, I've had some calls since I've been here, and I've not entertained any of those, because we really enjoy being here. We feel like my wife and daughters feel like we've been embraced, and even though this is a good ways from home, and we do miss family sometimes and that kind of stuff, we've also built family here, and people have really made us feel like this was home.
Talking with the athletic director at West Virginia, Wren Baker, here on Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, exclusively on TuneIn. Ross Hodge is your new men's basketball coach, and I think the narrative and some of the fans feel like, Darren DeVries was kind of out the door mid-season or during the season and kind of left West Virginia high and dry. What are your thoughts on that? And then tell us about what stood out about Ross Hodge.
Yeah, I think the first thing I would just say is, one, Coach DeVries done a really good job coaching the basketball team this year, and so deserves credit for that. We should have been in the NCAA tournament. I still don't know exactly how that didn't happen. And I'm not somebody, you can go back in my history of interviews. I'm not somebody who cries and moans in public a lot, but that was an absolute travesty if that team didn't get in. There were multiple other schools who had reached out to Darren, because there were several jobs that were open before the season closed. And I know factually, because as you all know, this is a small world, so you don't have to make very many calls to figure out what's going on, that he declined to talk to those schools. The only one that I'm aware of that he entertained at all was Indiana. And people in situations like this, people will conjure up a lot of this happened and that happened. I probably have more knowledge of the facts, because I was, inside. Whether it was Tucker's injury or whatever, there's all kinds of crazy things that are out there. I believe that for whatever reason, he felt like Indiana was a once in a lifetime opportunity, and it was one of the few that he would probably leave for, and it just happened to open at the wrong time. I was disappointed. I think if you look at the recent history, this job has performed as well or better than Indiana. Felt like we were set up and building something special here. Um, but ultimately, I think there's two things that you walk away from in those. One, there are certain things that are in your control and certain things that aren't. And so it was not my decision to make. It was his, and I have to, respect that. There's nothing I can do to change it. I think the other thing that I would just say is you can go down these rabbit holes of conspiracy theories, but what good does that do?
Right.
I know what he articulated to me throughout the season. I know the facts of what I do know, and I'd rather not spend. Life is short. I got two young daughters. I've got lots of things going on. I'd rather probably not spend my time trying to speculate on conspiracy theories because the outcome of that, no matter what, would not be favorable anyway. So, I have a great relationship. With coaches in general. Darren and I enjoyed a good relationship, and I just I'm grateful for the progress that was made in our program last year. Wish we would have been able to continue, but also things happen for a reason, and I think Coach Hodge was the right coach at the right time and has come in here and truly opened his heart to West Virginians and is quickly acclimating and getting to know people and becoming part of the culture.
Talking with Wren Baker here, the athletic director for West Virginia. I'm curious for your perspective on the future of the playoff. Should this thing stick at 12? Should it go to 16? Should it be a 4-4-2-2-1 or a 5+11 if it goes to 16? Just your overall perspective on the future of the college football playoff.
Generally, I'm in favor of more access and opportunity just because playing in the postseason in any sport is so special, especially if you're in that race for a championship. And so I would say I favor expansion overall, but I'm not a fan at all of the 4-4-2-2, and I think that everybody who's not the two leagues that are getting four should fight that to the fullest extent of their abilities in every way, shape, and form. And so I don't feel like that's what is good for the sport. I don't feel like that's what America wants. I don't feel like that it is you go out there and you earn it on the field. And so that's my perspective and my opinion. Obviously, there's much more powerful and influential people than Wren Baker that have opinions on that, and those have been expressed and pontificated. But to me, I would push back on that to the fullest extent possible, using everything at your disposal because I don't think it makes sense for anybody except for two conferences.
What do you think needs to happen for the Big 12 to kind of flip the narrative of, this conference is all parity? That's the word that we hear all the time when it comes to football. Parity, parity, parity. We see it as it's a super entertaining conference with more fourth quarter lead changes than any other league in America. So what has to happen for the Big 12 to better position itself there?
I think we have to get some massive wins in non-conference to kind of build some energy there early, and then the next one is we got to get some massive wins in the CFP. Arizona State did a great job this year, coming really really close, but they win that game, and like it probably changes the narrative some.
Yeah, you're right.
But parity is a good thing. You don't see people griping about parity in the SEC, which is another great league. But the reason why is they've backed it up consistently in the postseason, and they've also been able to get some massive wins in the non-con. So you kind of build that and you sustain that momentum and that energy around it. And with our league, there's so many new members, and people are still trying to figure that out. I mean, I think we just are going to have somebody who goes on a run in the postseason and maybe makes it to the champ game, and it'd be great if they won it. But at least advances to a place where everybody's like, holy, then the next year when somebody beats them or plays them, really close in a nail biter, then instead of it being, oh, it's a bunch of good teams but not great teams, it's, hey, that was two great teams. And so I think that's how you have to build the narrative, and change the narrative. But I will tell you, top to bottom, the games in our league are so dang compelling and competitive night in and night out. I think that over the long haul, that's going to be really positive for our league. And eventually we'll have that team that breaks through and proves it to the rest of the world.
One of the things we've talked a lot about after the House settlement is sort of the ambiguity of, the outside payment entity and the Deloitte clearinghouse, which I'm not a lawyer. Sometimes I play one on the radio, Wren, but it feels, there's no way that will hold up in a court. There's no free market in our society that is decided by an algorithm. But I digress. I heard you speak recently about collective bargaining, which is obviously a huge part of this. To me, there's no fix for this, including evening the playing field, so to speak, or giving everybody the same rules unless we collectively bargain. What's your perspective on that? I know it's difficult. I'm not saying it's not difficult, but what's your perspective on that?
Well, I think most athletic directors would have taken that path a long time ago, but there's not a path to take that path without employment. And employment has massive ramifications for campus that would honestly be catastrophic to the student experience. So if you make student athletes employees, much of the argument you would use for them being employees, you would use for the theater kids, the band kids, and there's not an ROI on those. And so it would just be a massive diminishment of opportunities on campus. And as you guys know, going to college and being on a campus is so much more about what you find in yourself than what you find in the books. If it was just about what you could find in the classroom, you could get the greatest chemistry professor in the world and Zoom to 1 million people right now, from the comfort of their home. And so when I reflect back on my college experience, I had some great professors and I learned a lot. But if you were to give me any of the finals from my last year of college, I think I would flunk them all right now. So it's not, I didn't retain necessarily as much of what I learned in the classroom as I did what I learned about life and what I learned about myself. And so when the pushback on employment is not because presidents and universities want to hold down student athletes. It's because the precedent that sets is catastrophic to campuses. And I think that's missed by a lot of the world. I think in terms of the House Summit, I will just say this. I hear a lot and I understand how some people could say that's not a free market. Free market is what somebody's willing to pay. Intercollegiate sports, though, is different than any other market because there's no ownership, right? It's these large bureaucratic organizations who are heavily influenced by outsiders who have no responsibility to the bottom line. So what you are seeing with major institutions with $200+ million budgets in the SEC and Big Ten, the richest of the rich, throwing $30 million deficits, is not sustainable. And who pays that? It's the student population eventually in some way, shape, or form.
Sure.
And so I push back on the let the market decide because I don't believe this is a market that will ever regulate itself. It's incapable of regulating itself. And so I think this will only be resolved. I think the House Summit is a great first step, but the final resolution is going to either require congressional help or help from DC where they recognize, you're seeing sports being cut. And for years, ADs are like, this is going to end up meaning that some sports are cut. And people are like, oh, you're just trying to gaslight and sound alarm bells. Well, sports are being cut, right? Yeah. They're being cut right now. And so if we care about having a broad-based athletic program that gives a great experience to all sports, not just the revenue-producing sports, then there's got to be some kind of federal help and relief on that. If there's not, then you're right. Some collective bargaining process. Now, if you want to split the baby, maybe the federal help comes in the form of some kind of quasi-employment status that doesn't make people employees, but gives you the chance to sit and collectively bargain. But I think, first of all, I think plaintiffs' counsel did a great job for student athletes. They didn't lose anything, including cost of attendance, for instance. They got to keep their scholarship, cost of attendance. I think if you were collectively bargaining, it's probably pretty reasonable that somebody would say, we're going to share this much revenue. We want to pull back this cost of attendance. But plaintiffs' counsel was very dug in on, we're not going to take anything away. And so I think student athletes were represented well. But from a legal standpoint, Ari, you're probably right. We're going to continue to face challenges unless we sit at the seat and sit at the table and discuss and bargain for things.
Wren, you have given us plenty to unpack. We greatly appreciate your time. I know you've got a meeting here at the bottom of the hour, so thank you so much for joining us here on Big 12 Radio.
Yeah, I always appreciate it, guys. Thanks for all you do to promote the Big 12, and look forward to joining you again soon.
All right, man.
Take care, brother.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
It's Wren Baker, the West Virginia athletic director.